From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show, including Kingdom of Nye Radio and Revolution Radio. If you want to take a listen to our archives, they are free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, do a little shopping at the SOR Vault. Grab a great book from We Read the Night. Join the Space Travelers for $5 a month, and Captain Shirk has you all up to date on the SOR Newswire. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by donating to Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. Musicians all over the world live a life of a vagabond, always on the road, and it's the road that can tell some pretty strange stories. Author Matthew L. Swayne is a journalist who currently works as a research writer at Penn State. Matt has worked as a reporter and as a music reviewer for several newspapers and online outlets. Balancing skepticism with an open mind, Matt uses his experience in journalism, which is rare in this field, and interest in both the ghost lore and the paranormal to collect and tell stories about the supernatural. It has led to 3 amazing books regarding the ghosts of music, 2 about haunted rock and roll, and now 1 about haunted country music. The books can be found on Amazon. Then at the bottom of hour number 3, I will bring you the SOR Newswire, brought to you by Paranoia Magazine. Mr. Matthew Swayne, I have wanted to do this interview with you. I looked at the date. It's over 4 years, my friend. Over 4 years. And we're finally here to do this. So thank you for coming on Spaced Out Radio tonight.
Well, thanks for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here. Really great to talk to you.
I'm ecstatic as well because I'm a giant music fan. You know what? I still believe that rock and roll isn't dead. I still believe that, good hair from the 80s still goes a long way with me. Maybe not as much hairspray, but nonetheless, I look at the bands that came through the 60s, 70s, 80s, and even the early 90s, and I look at what's out there now, and I just scratch my head and say, how? What happened? Why doesn't music like us anymore?
Yeah, I feel the same way, and I think in a kind of a way, writing these books was a way for me to kind of preserve that, the love of that music.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all. But I got to tell you, this had to be one of the funnest projects that anybody could work on, because never mind the paranormal stories that you have written about, there's so much mystique, mystery, and lore that surrounds music from the past 70, 80 years. I mean, this is just an open book waiting to happen, and you just happen to grab a hold of it.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I stand on the shoulders of some giants, people like R. Gary Patterson, who wrote Take a Walk on the Dark Side, which was a big inspiration for me, because my journey into this is a little on the bizarre side itself, because I was born on Halloween, and later on, as an adult, became a reporter at my hometown newspaper. I was born in Tyrone, Pennsylvania, and I became a reporter for this very small daily newspaper. And, so every Halloween I wanted to do a great Halloween feature. And one year I just decided I would try to pull together all the ghost lore and the ghost legends and the ghost stories that I heard around the town to create a feature story. And that story was probably one of the most popular stories that I've ever written at that paper. And, even months, maybe even years later, people would come up to me and say, oh, I remember reading that, and here's the experience I had. And so the marketing side of me in the back of my head said, this is a real rich area to mine, and perhaps create a compilation of books. And so I started out with ghost stories about universities, because I worked at Penn State, and Penn State has, probably one of the allegedly most haunted campuses in the United States. And from there, the publisher, I wanted another book, and I said, what about ghost stories of rock and roll? Because I had, our Gary Patterson in the back of my mind, and I knew some basic ghost stories, but I think to your point, I just love taking something that I'm super interested in this case, music history, and coupling it with the supernatural element. And that's where it all started, and it just kind of snowballed from there and became, I started out sort of, I guess, looking at it almost as entertainment, but I've since gained a newfound respect for both these stories and the history, and I guess the people who became, rock artists and country musicians.
And plus, you had to be a big music fan growing up. What was your was your song?
Yeah.
What was your song going up? Because I know you were a David Lee Roth Van Halen guy. We're going to clash tonight because I'm a Sammy Hagar Van Halen guy. So I don't know.
No.
Yeah, I know.
Contentious interview already.
I know. We're going there. We're going there, Matt.
That's okay. I mean, I grew up. I think I dressed up as Gene Simmons for Kiss from grades 5 through 8, I believe. So those early, I had an older brother who played a lot of, metal, a lot of almost prog rock was there too. So, but I always loved Kiss, rock and roll all night, party every day type of guy, and then into Van Halen, and I would say the ultimate song of my high school years would have been Unchained.
Very nice. Very, very cool. See, for me, it started off I remember when I was 7 years old, and my sister got AC/DC's Back in Black and hearing Hell's Bells for the first time. And then came 1983 with this British band called Def Leppard and their Pyromania album. And I had to have that. I had to have that because when I first heard Rock of Ages and Foolin', on Friday night videos, remember that? Let's age ourselves. Friday night videos.
Yeah.
I was like,
was that on
you got to be kidding me. Yeah, absolutely. The only thing that bugged me about Friday night videos is they always cut off like the last 30 seconds or 1 minute of the song. And it drove me nuts. Absolutely nuts. And then Van Halen's 1984 comes out, and then you start hearing about Iron Maiden, Dokken, Judas Priest, Ronnie James Dio, so on and so forth. But it was 1987, man. That's when life changed for me.
Yeah.
And I still have the Appetite for Destruction album right behind me in the studio here. I
consider them the last great American rock and roll band.
Yes, I would agree. I would totally agree. And, when you look at it and you look at the way music has shaped and formed, I don't care whether you're a fan of art or you're a fan of country or rap or rock and roll. We all have a beautiful love for some sort of art, especially musical art. And how did music form you growing up and leading up to these books?
I don't ever remember a time in my life when I didn't love music, and I actually, I'm a kind of a failed rock musician myself. I got into punk and what I would consider early grunge, and so for me, music was always an outlet and a creative outlet. And there is something about whatever that process is, which is kind of math and science and art all thrown together, that creates this magic that can change people. That's what I think I was attracted to. And that, believe it or not, becomes a big finding for me through this process of writing, 3 books about it. I realize now that, music is something that is kind of special, that raises one's consciousness. And in my opinion, I think that's why you have the connection between the supernatural and music. And I think there is absolutely no coincidence that these stories, both the ghost stories, a lot of which I tell in these books, along with some of the occult legends that crop up, that I think Mr. Patterson and I both touch on, and some other really good writers have certainly hinted on it. And also, these other tales of the unknown, such as this almost mystical connection between rock musicians and UFOs. I think there is definitely a reason that happens, and I think it's just the kind of magic of music. And perhaps there's more scientific reasons for the psychology of this that I haven't explored, but there is something deep about this kind of mystical musical connection.
So when you were looking into this and decided to try and bring your two loves, the love of the paranormal and the love of music, together, what came down to that decision? How did you come to that point?
Oh, that's kind of a funny story, because I really didn't have any idea how I was going to pull this off, but I think I was in a phone call with the acquisitions editor, or maybe it was an email conversation, but I basically just kind of blurted out, I want to write about ghost stories of rock and roll. And so there was not that much thought of it, just knowing that, a few years prior to that, I had read Take a Walk on the Dark Side, that I had remembered a few ghost stories about, and especially some ghost legends and ghost lore about Elvis. And so from that point on, I just started to dive into it. And, what happens is, if you're interested in the material, the research, it's nothing. You kind of you immerse yourself. It's actually kind of hard to pull yourself out of. And, once I took that cork off, I just found these stories just sort of flopping at me right and left, from Jim Morrison to Janis Joplin to Kurt Cobain. They just all seem to be right out there. I used a lot of the internet, and then tried to find some sources who could lead me in with a little more deeper texture to the stories, talk to some ghost hunters and things like that. So it was really just a kind of a process of jumping into where you think there might be a connection, and just kind of swimming around and finding it. And, I think we discussed this prior, but I really believe that I've only scratched the surface of this. There's so much more to this that's out there.
How open are artists to coming forward with their stories?
I guess that varies. They're not very open. Some of the leading artists are not very open to talking to me about it, but they've certainly gone to the press, and that's where I picked up a lot of these stories. But what I find, and I think this might be a pretty big generalization, is, and again, when we go back to this idea of how music affects one's consciousness, musicians are very open to the supernatural, and it seems like music fans are very open to the supernatural. And I used to think that rock fans were even more susceptible to believing in the supernatural, until I started writing the book on country ghosts. And then I see that there might be different kinds of shades of these ghost stories. Rock ghost stories tend to be a little darker than the country ghost stories, but it just feels indisputable that there's something about music and playing music and loving music that opens your mind to other possibilities. So I would say overall that rock musicians, rock artists are extremely open to the supernatural, and willing to share these stories.
I can see that. I can totally see that. And the entertainment factor is a lot, because these guys are and women are on the road sometimes 300 days a year. They're playing in everything from small bars to giant stadiums to old barns that really have no place to even have a stage anymore. But where the money is, that's where you go. And the long roads that are traveled, the communities all in between that are visited, every gas station, and as I paint a beautiful picture here of almost a Wanted Dead or Alive video by Bon Jovi, I look at it and I think the things that these gentlemen and women have seen while on the road, we're probably not even scraping the surface of these incredible ghost stories.
Right. Yeah, and also it's important to point out that most of these ghost stories are probably still, the internet has been a real godsend to people like me who are interested in this, because ghost stories tend to be of an oral culture. They're spread from person to person, and they tend to stay within these communities. That was, probably prior to the internet. But so you probably have these bands that have never really gone public or have written about or blogged about their incidents where they have, what would be, they might consider a supernatural encounter. They probably stay within those bands, within, maybe even within the bands themselves, and they don't really get out and tell people. Some of these stories just kind of spill out, accidentally. So that's another point that should be made, is that we're probably only getting the stories right now that have been told and retold, that there are often a lot of these ghost stories have a lot of different variations, which is somewhat of evidence of that taking place, that people are going to take the story and massage it a little. And I probably do it myself when I retell it in these books, so it's a living kind of breathing entity that I see.
I don't blame you. And it's a never-ending story, isn't it?
Right. Yeah, it's there's one, probably the best compliment that I ever received. I was at a book signing, and a lady came up to me, and she said, "Hey, I wanted to let you know I don't believe in ghosts at all." And I said, "That's okay." But she said, "But the thing is, I love this book because I learned so much of the history of rock and roll." And that, to me, is really kind of a side benefit of this whole thing, is that these ghost stories keep these legends alive. And as you kind of point out, music has changed, and we're faced with a completely different era in music history. But by telling the stories of like Robert Johnson and Jimmy Page and Janis Joplin and all of the rest, I think you're kind of preserving it. And maybe that is probably one reason why, that maybe ghost stories exist, so that we do continually have these people in the forefront, or maybe back in the spotlight. Might be a better way to put it.
When you go to these artists or try and get these stories from these artists, how accommodating are they? Or are you going more on newspaper reports and stories that maybe they've told through other interviews?
Yeah, I'm just too small potatoes, I think, for them to talk to me personally, and I've tried to reach out to them or reach out to family members to see if they would talk to me. I haven't had much success. I would go on Facebook and things like that, and they probably just think I'm another kook. But what I do is try to go with newspaper accounts, magazine accounts. There's always plenty of that. And that also works for me, because there's something that makes when you look at these ghost stories, there's a broad spectrum of ghost stories. A lot of people like to think, there's either a ghost story or there's not a ghost story, but in truth, there's a lot of different shades to it. So what happens when someone goes to the press, it tends to be taken a little more serious. It can be a little more credible. And the other stories that you often hear, I consider ghost lore, which, is usually more mythology that is cropped up. But the thing that I found about this is there's no black or white about this. There's some ghost lore that actually that turn into ghost accounts, and then there's ghost accounts, I think, that later on become ghost lore as the stories are told and retold. So it's really hard to tease apart in that case. So that's kind of been my approach, or maybe what approach has been given to me.
I understand that. And, hey, maybe we can, through our friend Bumblefoot, get you started off on that, because back on Halloween night of 2018, he came on this show and was talking about how him and his band Sons of Apollo were just starting their brand new tour tonight, by the way. God bless Bumblefoot for that. Horns up. And he was telling us about how when they were on stage, their gear kept shutting off, and they felt like people were bumping into them on stage, and they're like, we're the only ones up there playing, and our gear is being turned off, our pedals are being messed with and not firing when they want. He said it was just the most weird paranormal experience on the road. And, there's hundreds of stories like that, if not tens of thousands.
Yeah, true. I mean, that story, in fact, reminds me of, the stories of people who were recording, I think it's Sunset Studios, where Janis Joplin recorded, and how they continually would have problems with their equipment and feel the presence. A lot of people felt like she was there. There was a certain kind of fun maliciousness about the events.
Yes.
that these artists would think was Janis's personality bubbling through. So yeah, there are dozens and dozens of those types of stories.
Matt, I'm going to get you to hold on here, because we got to go to break at the bottom of the hour. And when we come back, I want to get into the Legend of the Crossroads. Was a deal with the devil really made? Author Matthew L. Swayne is our guest tonight. Haunted Rock and Roll is his book on Amazon, and more Haunted Rock and Roll. Go get them. This is the kind of books we want. This is what makes the paranormal fun on Spaced Out Radio.
Hey, space travelers, this is John Resig, founder of the Chive and Chive Charities. If you know anything about our website, you know we like to do things a little differently. We're not some faceless organization collecting money for a nebulous cause. Our donor dollars go directly toward life-improving items. Then we give those items directly to an underdog who needs it most. To become a donor with Spaced Out Radio's official charity, Chive Charities, just go to chivecharities.org/donate.
From the heartlands of Canada to beards around the world, we know how to take care of you. Fill your follicles with the Mighty Moose Beard Oil. All our oils and balms are handmade and 100% natural ingredients because we care about your beard. And hey, use the promo code SOR2019 and get your Mighty Moose Beard Oil today. You can check us out on our website, mightymoosebeard.com.
Hello, this is your guitar man, Ron Bumblefoot Thal, and I have to tell you, I love the response I get for Little Brother is Watching from Spaced Out Radio fans. It's amazing how music can inspire and make people think deeper about what's going on in the supernatural world. You can head over to my website, bumblefoot.com, to check out my music, my guitar workshops, my touring, even check out some of the hot sauces that I'm working on. And make sure you keep on listening, because with Spaced Out Radio, you know Little Brother is watching.
we're adding to the entertainment online for Spaced Out Radio. I'm Amber Beckard, and I want to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out Cryptid Tales, where I will take you on a journey into some of the strangest legends and lore from around the world, relaying the stories to you of the strange creatures and experiences that people have had throughout time. You can find Cryptid Tales at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. And while you're there, don't forget to check out our free archives and leave a comment. See you there.
Move over, brother, and let me own Saturday night.
This is Rich Giordano, and I'm inviting you to tune on in to Spaced Out Saturdays starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, 12 a.m. Eastern, where I'm going to bust open the lids on everything paranormal. Why? Because we want answers, and I'm the guy who's going to deliver those answers to you. Join the chat rooms, and we'll see you this Saturday. Just be there. No, really.
Hey everybody, the SOR Space Travelers is open. For just $5 a month, you can hang out with Dave and our crew privately in our members-only section. With your signing, you'll receive newsletters on what's going on with Spaced Out Radio. You'll have direct contact with the host during the show in our chat, live streaming videos, and a great forum for your posts and more. Become a Space Traveler now at spacedoutradio.com.
You wanted new SOR gear, and now you can have it. The SOR Vault is fully stocked with t-shirts, hats, hoodies, mugs, and everything in between, with great logos for you to choose from. So head on over to spacedoutradio.com, click on the SOR Vault, and go shopping. Pricing is quite affordable, and you can look good representing your favorite show. So go to our website and pick up your new SOR wear at the SOR Vault today.
Hello everyone, this is Ryan Stacy from the Experiencer Support Association, otherwise known as TESSA. We're glad to team up with Spaced Out Radio to help investigate your experiences on the SOR Sightlines Report. Together, we'll investigate the strange sightings and occurrences you've had. We're looking for answers just like you. So fill out a Sightlines report on the Spaced Out Radio website and let's figure out what's going on together.
If you like it hot, real hot, then heat up your meals with Bumblefoot hot sauce.
Get your Bumblefoot hot sauce today. The sauce, Bumblicious, and the 4 million Scoville unit Bumble. We're going in hot, real hot, coming out even hotter.
Keep the milk nearby and tantalize your taste buds tonight.
Bumblefoot hot sauce, available now at kajans.com.
Cold drinks, great food, and the best music in Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is the place to be, open until 2 a.m. nightly. Everything on the menu starts at just $6.95. Who serves food that cheap anymore? At the Moose, you'll never know who you'll run into. Rock stars, actors, athletes. It's the place everyone wants to be. So join us at the Moose Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver, the official party bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Hello, Space Travelers. It's me again, Carl. Don't forget to join the Space Travelers Club for just $5 a month and follow Spaced Out Radio on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Our Instagram, Dave Scott SOR. Our Facebook page is Spaced Out Radio Show. Our archives are free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Come woo it up with Spaced Out Radio today. Bye!
Are you looking for great advertising value for your company? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. We have a multitude of places to get your name out there, including commercial ads during the show, special promotions, and banners on our website. Our audience is proven to support the companies that support our show. We can make your budget work for you. So for more information, please contact us at sales@spacedoutradio.com.
At spacedoutradio.com, we are keeping you up to date on all the news with the SOR Newswire. Captain Shirk leads the team that is bringing you the news of the day and exclusive stories on everything paranormal and supernatural. It's free to read, it's updated daily, and it's right there for you. The SOR Newswire is a one-stop shop for the news of the day. Check it out at spacedoutradio.com today.
Welcome back to the second half hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. Great to have you with us. Remember, if you miss most of this show or others, you can always check out our free archives at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. You can check those out while we are chatting away, talking haunted rock and roll tonight with author Matthew L. Swayne. You can find any of his haunted music books on Amazon. I highly suggest you do. Matthew, thank you so much for joining us. Before I bring you back, I got to give a shout out to my cousin Gary in Edmonton. You know, he loves and helps put together a great folk festival, one of the best and biggest in North America up there. So, cousin Gary, thank you for tuning on in tonight. Really appreciate it. Matthew, welcome back.
Thank you. Thanks for having me back.
No problem, my friend. No problem. I want to start off with the Crossroads. Robert Johnson, the legend has it that he sold his soul to the devil in order to become a famous musician. And then there's that really, really awkward picture, the only picture that is said to exist of him, where he's posing with his guitar, and on the curtain in the background looks to be a demonic face. For people who don't know about Robert Johnson, could you tell us a little bit about him?
Sure. You know, when you talk about the history of rock and roll, I would say rock and roll is one of the only art forms that really starts, its origin story is a ghost story, and that's the story of Robert Johnson. And Robert Johnson's story is that he was born an African-American man in the Mississippi Delta, and the Mississippi Delta was pretty poor, and there wasn't a lot of opportunities for a black man in that area. Basically, the two choices, as far as Robert Johnson saw it, was one, to be a farmer or sharecropper, or the other one in this era, we're talking about the early 20th century, or was to be a blues player. And he used to look at these blues guitarists, and by the way, the Delta had the best guitarists probably in the world, definitely the best blues guitar players in the world. And he decided that that's what he wanted to do. He wanted to be a blues guitar player. And so the story is, and a lot of this is actually historical fact, some of these players, people like Son House, have gone to historians and told their stories and told stories about Robert Johnson. But according to them, Robert Johnson started to hang out with his guitar, and he was always pestering these expert guitar players for hints and tips and how to play certain blues licks and whatnot. And, you know, after a while, according to Son House, he got just really annoying. And so they sort of kicked Robert Johnson out of the circle, or he removed himself, depending on who's telling the story. The next thing you know, for about a year, Robert Johnson just completely disappears from the Delta, apparently from this area, and certainly these blues players didn't hear from him. And then almost a year to the day that he was disappeared, the one story which is probably the most famous account is that Son House and some of these other great players were playing at a juke joint somewhere in the Delta, and they had gone out to the parking lot to have a smoke and to drink a little and to talk, and it was probably unbearably hot in that juke joint. And as they were out there talking, they heard this amazing guitar playing, and they, obviously looked around to each other, and it was none of them who were playing because they were on this break. They, of course, wanted to hear who this guitarist was, and the way that they described it was like this guy was playing blues music, but almost a completely different way. They talk about that it was almost etheric, almost you might say demonic. They drifted back in, And sure enough, it was Robert Johnson up on the stage playing this guitar. And they talk about his eyes sort of rolling up in the back of his head, and there's even this imagery that his eyes were glowing off from the lights. And one story is that he had a cataract that was kind of reacting with the light. Just a very spooky presence. And from that point on, Robert Johnson becomes the guitar player in the Delta. He goes on more and more successful, more and more women are after him. You know, he just is kind of living his best life. And then and what rumor quickly spreads around the Delta is that what Robert Johnson did was to sell his soul to the devil, because he was at best a mediocre guitar player. And then suddenly he's not just a great blues guitar player, but he's kind of created his own sound. And this story starts to circulate through the Delta that one midnight he goes to the crossroads close to the Dockery plantation in the Delta. And there he meets a man, tall man, dressed all in black, who says, you know, if you sign this contract, I'll give you everything that you want. The wine, the women, and the blues, they're yours. But you have to sell your soul back to me. And so Robert Johnson signs the contract. The devil takes the guitar from Robert Johnson and retunes it. And that's the story about how Robert Johnson sold his soul to the devil. A few years after that, I don't even know whether it was a few years, but he dies. Robert Johnson dies tragically and somewhat horrifically. He becomes ill. He is sick. He is just in profound pain until he finally dies. And a lot of stories say that he was poisoned, but there's this other element that this was just the devil coming back to collect on his contract. Another thing about the Robert Johnson story is that even though this rumor is passing from place to place, Robert Johnson also kind of stirs it on himself, because he writes songs like Hellhound on My Trail, Me and the Devil Blues, Crossroad Blues, that all reflect this idea of this occult boost to his guitar playing prowess. And that's really the story of Robert Johnson. And that's how this legend becomes instrumental throughout rock history. And later on, it's not just Robert Johnson who makes claims about selling his soul to the devil. One of the probably not really talked about revelation was that Bob Dylan, who was, I think, in the University of Minnesota when he started out, was just a fair, decent folk guitar player among dozens and dozens of other good folk guitar players in that area. And then he travels to New York, and then a lot of people say when he came back, he suddenly had this great gift of guitar playing. He had an interesting sort of new finger-picking style. And at least in one interview, the interviewee asked him, you know, what caused this change? And Dylan said, it's selling your soul to the devil. You know, you signed the contract. So that becomes kind of part of the rock and roll mythos. And just one final point is that even though there's this supernatural element to it, the story of Robert Johnson also reflects the progress of an artist who, and you see this constantly in rock history, of the person who's trying to fit in. He gets kicked out of the circle and he develops his own style. He goes back, he becomes famous, and, you know, part of that selling your soul to the devil is that fame is what's actually killing you. So it's not only this remarkable story about the supernatural, and it not only reflects rock's kind of marriage with the occult, but it's also a story that a lot of artists begin to relate to, and it shows you maybe about how rock and roll recycles through movements. And you see Elvis who comes out on the world stage and has this new sound that everyone embraces, and he becomes famous. But then, later on he's doing, music for films and movie soundtracks. He's kind of lost his edge. But then the Beatles appear, and they follow up on that. And that's what I find interesting, is that these stories are so multi-level, so multi-dimensional, that you can get a lot of lessons out of it.
A lot of people over the decades have searched for the crossroads. Have they ever really been found?
Well, there are several possibilities, but the one that's most likely is there's a place called Dockery Plantation. And that's, I think, near Clarksdale, Mississippi. That is probably the historic place I would say that's where most historians claim that this crossroads was. And there does seem to be some mythology about this place, even before Robert Johnson, as being somewhat haunted. And there are a lot of stories, ghost stories that come from there. There's a graveyard not too far away from there that is allegedly haunted. So I would say that historically is where they place it at. But again, with everything, when you're dealing with Robert Johnson, there's a lot of mythology involved. There's a lot of ghost lore involved. I think he has like 3 grave sites, as I recall. I could never find his actual grave site when I was looking for it. So that's kind of where the mystery lies.
He's also the first recorded member of the 27 Club.
Yeah, he initiates so much of that. And the 27 Club, if your listeners don't know, is this the age 27. There's a propensity for rock stars to die at the age of 27, and Robert Johnson is allegedly the first. Now, there are some questions of whether he actually was 27 at that time, or maybe a little older, maybe a little younger, but most of the rock musicologists suggest that he was 27. But then, comes Janis Joplin dies at 27, Jim Morrison dies at 27, Jimi Hendrix dies at 27, Brian Jones dies at 27, Pigpen from the Grateful Dead, I think he dies at 27. Kurt Cobain dies at 27. Amy Winehouse dies at 27. So there is this just huge kind of anomaly of rock stars who die at 27. There have been several studies, and one I remember reading was that there was no significance of 27 in rock history about when these rock stars die. However, when you look at the methodology of that study, they start out in 1950. I think they took it to the 1980s, and they also only considered people who had a number 1 song on the English charts. And what that does is it rolls out most of the American artists, because I don't think the Doors had a number 1 there. I don't think Janis Joplin ever did. So it would probably skew the results. And also in 1950, the rock era doesn't really start to 55, 57 in that kind of time frame. So I think it would skew the numbers. It does seem to me, looking at it, that it just is if anything, just a very bizarre anomaly. And it was initiated by our good friend Robert Johnson back in the day.
All right, let's move on, because you've mentioned the 27 Club here and a number of names that have listed. Is this all circumstance, or do you think there is something really to the 27 Club?
Boy, that's a great $1 million question that I've struggled with. As what I consider an open-minded skeptic, I just want to kind of deliver the story. I honestly, if you're would really press me. There seems to be something, I don't want to say special, but unique about that age. And I have my own theories, and one of my theories is that, a lot of these folks who did die at age 27 also had drug and alcohol problems. It could be that that's just when the drugs and alcohol catch up with somebody. That seems to be the most the most obvious natural explanation. That's about as close as I can get to a real explanation. But I do have to admit that it's just very, very strange and if it's a coincidence, it's a heck of a coincidence.
Yeah, and that is something. I mean, the legend is always a great story, isn't it? And seeing all of these people die at 27, but like you mentioned, most of it has been due to the over-abuse of alcohol or with a combination of drugs or drugs only. And yet you look at bands, okay, in the 80s who were pumping through more heroin than most people eat in a day. And here they are, like you look at Tommy Lee, you look at Slash, Steven Adler, a number of these guys move down the list where they shouldn't even be alive right now. Nikki Sixx is another one. He died twice. Ozzy Osbourne, how the hell is Ozzy still alive? Never mind Keith Richards.
Right.
That's a completely different story there.
Yeah, that's true. And there was another... in my second book on haunted rock and roll, that's more haunted rock and roll, there's also this grunge lead singer curse that I kind of stumbled on, and that's the propensity of these lead singers from grunge bands to die. And you have Kurt Cobain, Lane Staley, Andrew Wood, Mia Zapata, Bradley Knoll, Shannon Hoon, all of those are from this grunge era. And to your point, a lot of them had drugs and alcohol, especially heroin. But the thing that always gives me pause is, I wrote this book on country ghosts, and what I noticed was a lot of those, country musicians lived hard lives, but they didn't have this tendency to die at 27. And when you look at the grunge curse, you see that they're mainly lead singers. They're not bass players or lead guitar players or drummers. They tend to be lead singers. So there are these weird kind of coincidences that crop up, especially in rock and roll. You don't see it much in country music. And if it's just hard living that's causing it, then I would think you would see it across the board. I think you would see it in country music and I guess jazz and some of these other styles.
We've only got about 4 minutes before we got to go to break at the top of the hour. Our guest tonight, author Matthew L. Swayne, Haunted Rock and Roll is where we talk about. You also talked about selling the soul to the devil. You mentioned Robert Johnson. You mentioned, who was the other artist? But one of the bands that I have heard about this rumor, and I've read up on it, is the Rolling Stones. That they had to sacrifice, I mean, it's so hokey because the rumor is that they had to sacrifice Brian Jones at 27, and the other rule, in order to stay the biggest band in the world, they had to keep touring, and if you look at them, they should have stopped touring about 25 years ago, but they're still going.
Yeah, I have never heard that one. I did hear one about John Lennon. And in England, it's not the crossroads, it's a bridge. And apparently this is where the deal is done in England. You meet the devil on this bridge and you're given a contract. And according to this story, in 1960, or was it 1960? I think it was 1960, John Lennon allegedly went to one of these mythological bridges near Liverpool, actually not too far away from his house in Mendips, if I'm getting this story straight. And he signed the soul to the devil. Now, the devil is a little more generous in England and gives him 20 years. So he has this phenomenal success, and of course he's gunned down in 1980. So those stories do crop up about all these different rock stars. I haven't heard anything about the Rolling Stones, but their supernatural legendary status is pretty well etched.
So when you hear the term that they sold their soul to the devil, what do you actually put stock into that?
I tend to look at it more as not like they actually met the devil and signed the deal. I think the deal, and I think it was, I think it was Geezer Butler said they didn't sell the soul to the devil. The devils were all wearing suits, and that's kind of the way I look at it. Is how music and an artist's vision is corrupted through self-indulgence, but also commercialization. I think that's what the story really speaks to me about.
I understand that. I get that. Little critique from one of our listeners on hashtag Spaced Out Radio on Twitter. Derek says, Hey, Matt, if you keep debunking your own stories, we're never going to reach Friday night peak woo, which means that we got to get into the weird and strange. We got to pick it up in hour 2 here, my friend, because poor Derek, if he doesn't get his Friday night peak woo, I hear about it all weekend until I go on air on Monday. That's
I'm
just
sorry,
the way
Derek.
it goes.
I'm just a devil's advocate of my own work, so you'll have to bear with me.
Oh, we'll figure it out. We got about 45 seconds here before we need to go to break at the top of the hour. And in regards to the 27 Club and the devil, is there anything that has coincided between those two?
Well, besides Robert Johnson being the connection between those two, I can't, there's this kind of, I would say, a rumor behind it that when you die at 27, that means you signed the deal with the devil. That's kind of what they're saying. But, when you get to it, I don't really see a lot of, I've never heard, well, now I'm going to contradict myself because, a lot of these artists also had a fascination with Robert Johnson, and a lot of them played. There's actually the Crossroad Blues, which are people who have recorded Crossroad Blues by Robert Johnson, tend to have some similar fate too. So I think that
Matthew, I'm going to get you to hold on right there because we're going to go to break here at the top of the hour. Author Matthew L. Swayne, Haunted Music, all night long on Spaced Out Radio. Stay tuned for hour 2.
Are you an experiencer of something strange that can't be explained? Do you want help finding out what's going on? I'm Ryan Stacy, head of the Experiencer Support Association, otherwise known as TESSA. We've teamed up with Spaced Out Radio to investigate cases filled out in the SOR Sightlines report. We are independent and there's no cost to what we do. All we need is your experience. Let's find out what's happening together on the SOR Sightlines report.
A little bit of science, a little bit of skepticism. Add a dash of snark and you have the makings of Spaced Out Sundays with me, Everett Thielen. Together we will look into the reality of the paranormal with an open eye and rational thought. Oh, did I mention there'll be plenty of woo as well? Your time spent with Spaced Out Sundays will make the night even better. The chat rooms are open, 9:06 p.m. Pacific, 12:06 a.m. Eastern, right here at spacedoutradio.com.
We all know on Spaced Out Radio we love a good beard and mustache, so why not take care of your facial hair with Mighty Moose Beard Oil? Made in Canada, we're taking care of beards and stashes around the world. We use 100% natural ingredients with our oils and balms to make your whiskers feel silky smooth. Use promo code SOR2019 at MightyMooseBeard.com today.
Get your horns up with me on Spaced Out Radio. This is Ron Bumblefoot Thal. Come tune in to SOR where you can hear me rock out with Little Brother is Watching, the official theme song of Spaced Out Radio. And then come on over to bumblefoot.com where you can find out about my tour schedule, my music, and everything else. Bumblefoot.com keeps you up to date on what I'm doing and the best way to stay in touch with my music and music camps. Sign up for my newsletter at bumblefoot.com and remember, Little Brother is watching.
Hello, Space Travelers. It's me again, Carl. Don't forget to join the Space Travelers Club for just $5 a month and follow Spaced Out Radio on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Our Instagram, Dave Scott SOR. Our Facebook page is Spaced Out Radio Show. Our archives are free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Come woo it up with Spaced Out Radio today. Bye!
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
Hi, this is Amber Beckrud, and I want to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel where we store all of the SOR show archives for free. And as an added bonus, every 2 weeks I'm posting brand new content on Cryptid Tales, where I will get into some of the spookier legends and folklore from around the world and tell the stories that go with them. Find us at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio and check out Cryptid Tales today. Drop a comment and let me know what you want to hear. See you there.
The party is always on at the Moose Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is where you want to be when visiting Canada's West Coast. Open until 2 a.m. nightly, the Moose cranks up the rock while serving some of the best rated food in the city. The menu starts at $6.95. Why party anywhere else in Vancouver when the Moose is right there? Get your horns up and rock with the Moose, the official party bar of Spaced Out Radio.
For the price of 1 cup of coffee a month, you can become an SOR Space Traveler. The Space Travelers Club is a place where you can interact with other listeners, either live during the show or on our great forum. We want your stories, pictures, comments, and ideas. You'll get live video streams, exclusive content, and be a part of our newsletter. Stay in touch with everything SOR. The Space Travelers Club is just $5 a month at spacedoutradio.com.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Looking for creative ways to get your company out in the public? How about advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Our sales department is waiting to hear from you, and we can work around any budget. From commercial spots to banners to special promotions, there are many opportunities to get your name and product out to our SOR listeners. For a price guide and more information, please contact us at sales@spacedoutradio.com.
The SOR Vault is open for business, and do we have some cool swag for you to pick up? All you have to do is head over to our website and click on the SOR Vault. You have a variety of cool logos to choose from, and put them on anything you want. T-shirts, hoodies, hats, coffee mugs, you name it, we can get it to you. So do your shopping by supporting the store you love. Get your Spaced Out Radio swag at the SOR Vault today.
We are scouring the world for the most intriguing stories of your day. Take the time to read up on the SOR Newswire, where our team, led by Captain Shirk, will deliver to you some of the best paranormal and supernatural news, along with some stories that will blow your mind from the weird to the wacky. It's the news outside the news that piques interest, and that's what we're looking to deliver to you. The SOR Newswire, only at spacedoutradio.com.
I'm feeling a little spicy tonight. What to do? What to do?
Why not get Bumblefuck?
4 million Scoville units of pure hard rock. Bumblefoot hot sauces come in 3 flavors. The burning Bumble. Tone it down a bit with Bumblicious and throw the sauce on everything.
Spice it up. Bumble me, baby. Bumblefoot hot sauce. Get it today at Kajans.com.
Hi there, this is Geraldine Orozco from San Francisco's Bay Area Meditation. I invite you to join me the first Tuesday of every month with Dave Scott for Spaced Out Radio's The Spiritual You. In this fast-paced world we live in, it's time for you to take some time for you. We'll cover every possible subject from powerful meditation to healing techniques to your own intuition and spirituality. So come join us for The Spiritual You.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio is underway tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Appreciate you joining us on this Friday night, early Saturday morning. We welcome back everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates. WQEE 99.1 FM in Newnan, Georgia. KDUN AM 1030 in Reedsport, Oregon. KZFX 93.7 FM in Ridgecrest, California. UPRN 107.7 FM in New Orleans. And in Dangerfield, Texas, KDNF AM 1560. On the digital side, we're proud to broadcast on Kingdom of Nye Radio and Revolution Radio. Remember, all of our archives are free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Simillimum. Simillimum is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets a password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we got a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, do a little shopping at the SOR Vault, grab a great book from We Read the Night, join the Space Travelers for $5 a month, and Captain Shirk has you all up to date on the SOR Newswire. We are talking about haunted rock and roll tonight. Our guest is author Matthew L. Swayne. You can find his books on Amazon. This is a set, Haunted Rock and Roll, more Haunted Rock and Roll, and Haunted Country Music that you definitely want to get if you're a music buff. There's some great stories in here, so do a little shopping for yourself. You deserve it. Matthew, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm loving this.
Me too, man. Me too. I got to talk Jimi Hendrix. Okay, have to, because I'm a giant Hendrix fan, and I will never forget. I mentioned this on the show before, but when I saw the Jimi Hendrix lyrics to Voodoo Child, the original lyrics in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland, Ohio, I just about freaked out, because it was just, I mean, seeing his guitar, some of his outfits, and then the lyrics. I think it was like on a pizza box or, you know, almost a ripped up piece of paper. I snuck a picture of it somewhere. But, you know, it's just amazing that, you know, Jimi Hendrix, the way we talk about him, you'd swear he had a 30-year career. And yet it was only 2.5 years that he left his mark.
It was so brief. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they...
Go ahead.
I mean, you hear stories about when he goes to England. He was playing in the U.S. and he played a few club dates in England initially, in London, and how those musicians, people like Jeff Beck, you know, the rumor is that he put the guitar up for 6 months. He couldn't even look at it after listening to Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So when it comes to, you know, him being a part of the 27 Club and the paranormal side of Jimi, what did you learn?
So you know, when I first started to investigate this, I really thought that I would find some ghost stories, some Jimi Hendrix ghost stories, particularly in the apartment where he passed away. But, you know, I never found anything really definite. Now, there's a rumor that there is a hotel in England, I think London, that is said to be haunted by Jimi Hendrix, but I just could never find that. And I don't think it was the apartment where he died. I believe it was an apartment or a hotel that he stayed at. So I didn't include that in any of the books, but one thing that just kept cropping up over and over again that I didn't write about in my first book, but I really wanted to talk about in the second one, was this affiliation that Hendrix had with UFOs and with alien encounters, which, according to his brother, really started when he was a kid. There's kind of a very strange story that his brother talks about seeing a UFO when he was out playing in the yard with Jimmy. And then he even talks about some type of mechanical, almost like an eye, that fell from this machine that they looked at, and then the UFO disappeared. And Jimi Hendrix said, somewhat cryptically to his brother, "Don't worry, they'll be back." There's another story that Curtis Knight, who had a band that Jimmy was the guitar player for, just as Hendrix was starting out. And this story is even kind of, we'll get into peak woo right here. This will do it. But Curtis Knight and the band had left in a van from their gig, and they were trying to beat a blizzard, but they didn't make it, and the van actually went off the road into a snow embankment and was covered in snow. And the band decided they would just stay in until a snowplow came by or someone would rescue them, and they kept the engine running. And then, according to Curtis Knight, he looks out the window, and there's this bright light right in front of them, which he thought might be the plow or maybe some emergency vehicle. But he quickly saw that a spacecraft had landed in front of the van, and that this figure was drifting over towards him. Jimmy was sitting next to Curtis asleep, and then when Curtis looked over again, he said that there was some type of connection between Jimmy and this creature, like they were communicating. The snow melts from in front of the van, and the craft disappears, and they get back on their way. So that was another UFO story that revolves around Jimmy. And of course, all through Jimmy's career, he kind of mentions space and things like that. And then at one of his final concerts in Hawaii, there's this story that as Hendrix was looking over the audience, a UFO had drifted across the sky, and that he made mention. He said something like, "There goes our friends." Of course, the audience was looking at him, not looking at the UFO, so I guess we won't know. But so those are stories that crop up about Jimmy more so than, the paranormal ghosty stuff.
So you think he was an ET contactee?
That would be the rumor there, yeah. That he had something beyond just a casual observation of the UFO. That these folks, like this Curtis Knight story, seems to be that he had a deep connection with them.
That is interesting. I've never heard that before about Jimmy. I
Mm.
like him even more now. Even more that we can take him peek woo. Derek, you better be happy with that. You better be happy with that, Derek. That's all I'm going to say. Do you think Jimmy was murdered?
I've heard those accounts, and what I did hear was that there was some shenanigans with a manager, and that he would have had the wherewithal and the reason to kill Jimmy. But I don't get into the conspiracy too much in my books, if at all. Maybe I mention them in passing or in context. So I don't know. I mean, I would like to hear your opinion about it.
Oh, I don't know. My friend Everett, who hosts the Sunday show, he has a lot of connections and stories within the music industry. and we have discussed this topic, and it's one of those weird ones that you just don't know. You don't know if it's true. You don't know if it's just another part of the legend of Jimi Hendrix, because there's always something coming out and people are always starving for more. So I really don't know if he was or not. I hope not. I really hope not, but it's scary to think that it might be true because of the jealousy, and he was about to fire his manager, and and that goes a long way. And, but hey, we're almost 50 years past his death now, and we're going to, these type of stories are going to continue. That's the way it goes in this field.
Yeah, and it also, it relates to the Brian Jones death incident too, because according to the official account, Brian Jones died due to misadventure, and he actually drowned. He was probably drinking and probably on drugs, and so the coroner immediately claims death by misadventure. And then there was always, this was even in the 80s and 90s, I remember reading about how he was killed, how he was murdered. And I never gave that much credence. But then apparently a deathbed confession from one of Brian Jones's construction workers. People were working on his mansion at that time. When he died, he confessed that he was the one that killed Brian Jones. That Brian Jones was kind of a little jerk a lot of times, and he had just had enough, and he decided when Brian Jones was swimming, he would drown him. That's one of those things where most of my life I considered it just, that when you look at the lifestyle of a Brian Jones or a Jimi Hendrix, you don't have to go too far to consider that by their own behavior that they would increase the risks of some type of accidental death. So that's why I'm always normally a skeptic about it, about these conspiracies. But in that case, I feel like, there's some strong indications that I was wrong with that initial suspicion.
All right, let's move on here because we have so many topics that I do want to get to here. I'm curious in regards to, in your first book about Kurt Cobain, because there is still a lot of mystery around this. Was he murdered? Did he commit suicide? What were the demons that were haunting him that led him to overdosing on heroin? I mean, this is that part of that grunge movement that started a lot of suicides that continued right to a few years ago with the lead singer of Soundgarden, Chris Cornell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there is the Seattle connection there, too.
Right. And, as far as, and again, there's a conspiracy theory around Cobain's death that maybe Courtney Love had something to do with it. Again, I didn't really touch on that too much, if at all, in the book. But what you do see is Kurt Cobain, another member of the 27 Club, was always somewhat troubled, and he had a significant heroin addiction. A lot of people and his friends said it came out from that he was in constant physical pain. What does happen is after he dies that there seems to be a lot of people who are deeply connected with Cobain and his message and relate to him. And there are several ghost stories that revolve around him. The park right outside of the house where he committed suicide allegedly is haunted, and people have seen this figure of a troubled young man at the bench, which became a makeshift memorial to him. There have been other people who have tried to contact him through things like the Ghost Box. And so there's still this paranormal, supernatural cloud that hangs over Cobain and his life and his death.
That's interesting in regards to that. So was he a spiritual person? Did he have any, outside of this pain that he was allegedly suffering from, was there ever any reports of him dealing with demons or dealing with something dark that was holding him down, which came out in his music and eventually his taking of his own life?
I did not come across anything like that. He certainly, when you look at his videos and things, he certainly flirted with religious iconography and religious symbolism crop up a lot in his work. So maybe that has something to do with it, but I don't think I've ever come across anything that definite about his dealings with the supernatural. I feel like he seemed to me to be more of a committed materialist. I think he would probably laugh at the conversations that we were having.
Now, do you buy the story then that he wasn't murdered? I know you're not really a conspiracy guy, but it is part of the story, the legend.
Yeah, I mean, it's just I tend to look at the simplest explanation is probably the one that sticks. That's just old journalism and devil's advocacy for my part. It seems like he had so many problems, that he had just left a rehab and not successfully completed it, that, you're going to increase the odds of something horrific like a suicide that happened to him. So I tend to always go with the simplest explanation.
Yeah,
Derek's probably really upset at me right now.
Well, I do know that in Duff McKagan's autobiography, because Duff McKagan grew up with a lot of these guys in Seattle, and Duff McKagan's the bass guitarist for Guns N' Roses, so of course I'm going to have his autobiography. They were on the same flight back to Seattle together, and they actually saw each other at the airport and had a quick chat before they ended up going their separate ways. And then, it was like a day or two later that Cobain killed himself. So it was very tough on him in regards to that, because I guess there were some tensions in between GNR or Axl Rose and Kurt Cobain, and Kurt was having troubles with that, and so were a few other people. And that's kind of what started that conversation off. So it is kind of intriguing how closely knit the music community is when things happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you see that a lot. Yeah. And, the outpouring of emotion and grief at Kurt Cobain is, I don't think anyone was exactly surprised at the outcome, but it's still, I think you do see how deeply those connections are across the communities. And I also think there's probably an element of, but the grace of God go I, that any one of those folks could have probably ended up just like Kurt.
All right, we only got about 4 minutes here before we got to go to break at the bottom of the hour. I want to sneak one more in, and let's go back in time a little bit here to when Buddy Holly passed away on that fateful plane crash with Ritchie Valens and the Big Bopper.
Yeah, so that's, the anniversary of that will be coming up soon. I think it was February 3rd, I think was the day the music died. But, that's one of these tragic stories that really altered rock history forever, because Buddy Holly was growing as an artist who was writing his own material, performing his own material, and also producing his own material. And so on that plane crash where he dies, and so does the Big Bopper and Ritchie Valens, it was just kind of one of those horrific events in rock history. It was a pivotal moment when we lost so much talent. And then even years afterwards, the site where he dies, which is near Clear Lake, Iowa, it was a cornfield. The plane crashed in there. There have been these reports of people seeing lights on the anniversary kind of zipping through the cornfield and the fields around there. And then you also have people who say that they can hear, they've heard a crash on the anniversary, they've heard screams. There's all kinds of somewhat like supernatural tension around that area. And of course, some of the bars that Buddy Holly played at are rumored to be haunted by him. So that's a huge story in haunted rock and roll.
That would be eerie seeing that. Do we see that with a lot of artists who have died in crashes? I'm thinking Lynyrd Skynyrd. I'm thinking Stevie Ray Vaughan. Is it quite similar with people like that who passed away?
You know, I can't really say that because Lynyrd Skynyrd, I think there are some ghost stories around that site. I have yet to be able to find, I'm a huge Stevie Ray Vaughan fan. I've yet to really find anything about that helicopter crash, about whether there were any type of paranormal or supernatural incidences around that. So it really seems to be, you would suspect that, but often that's not the case. Again, it might be that these stories are still in the oral stage. People are telling them, but not really sharing them at large.
Interesting. So getting back to that Buddy Holly crash, do we know of anybody who's ever investigated those mysterious lights on the anniversary? And if not, why not? Why hasn't anybody done that?
Yeah. I think, as I recall, investigating that, there have been several paranormal groups who go there and try to find evidence. So I would say, yeah, I didn't see anything like official reports from them or anything like that. But yeah, they're definitely looking into it.
We've got under a minute left here. Now, are people seeing, when it comes to Buddy Holly, any of the images of the musicians walking around trying to figure out what went on?
I've never heard of any apparitions there, but I have heard of apparitions of Buddy Holly at some of these bars that he played at. I think the Rave Eagles Club was one of them. Usually they're all connected with that kind of misfortunate tour where this crash happened, and it seemed to be doomed from the very beginning. So that's where I've heard of stories of actually people seeing Buddy Holly apparition.
All right. I'm going to get you, or do we have another minute here? No, we're going to break right now. Sorry. Read my clock wrong. Matt, I'm going to get you to hold on here because we're going to go to break at the bottom of the hour. Author Matthew L. Swayne, Haunted Rock and Roll, more Haunted Rock and Roll, Haunted Country Music. All the books can be found by just typing in Matthew L. Swayne on Amazon. I highly suggest you get this collection. It is fantastic. So make sure you add it to your bookmarks. You want these books. More Haunted Rock and Roll right after this on Spaced Out Radio.
Hello, this is your guitar man, Ron Bumblefoot Thal, and I have to tell you, I love the response I get for Little Brother Is Watching from Spaced Out Radio fans. It's amazing how music can inspire and make people think deeper about what's going on in the supernatural world. You can head over to my website, bumblefoot.com, to check out my music, my guitar workshops, my touring, even check out some of the hot sauces that I'm working on. And make sure you keep on listening, because with Spaced Out Radio, you know Little Brother is watching.
Finish off your weekend and kick off your new week with me, Everett Thiemer, right here on Spaced Out Sundays. I'm going to bring you great guests, a little bit of snark, and plenty of information to think about. But don't worry, there's going to be plenty of woo as well. We are going to hit everything in the paranormal and supernatural, including the odd Psychic Sundays. So tune us in on Sunday, 9:06 p.m. Pacific, 12:06 a.m. Eastern, right here at spacedoutradio.com.
You wanted new SOR gear, and now you can have it. The SOR Vault is fully stocked with t-shirts, hats, hoodies, mugs, and everything in between with great logos for you to choose from. So head on over to spacedoutradio.com, click on the SOR Vault, and go shopping. Pricing is quite affordable, and you can look good representing your favorite show. So go to our website and pick up your new SOR wear at the SOR Vault today.
From the heartlands of Canada to beards around the world, we know how to take care of you. Fill your follicles with the Mighty Moose Beard Oil. All our oils and balms are handmade and 100% natural ingredients because we care about your beard. And hey, use the promo code SOR2019 and get your Mighty Moose Beard Oil today. You can check us out on our website, mightymoosebeard.com.
Hello, space travelers. It's me again, Carl. Don't forget to join the Space Travelers Club for just $5 a month and follow Spaced Out Radio on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Our Instagram, Dave Scott SOR. Our Facebook page is Spaced Out Radio Show. Our archives are free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Come woo it up with Spaced Out Radio today. Bye!
If you like it hot, real hot, then heat up your meals with Bumblefoot hot sauce.
Get your Bumblefoot hot sauce today. The sauce, Bumblicious, and the 4 million Scoville unit Bumble. We're going in hot, real hot, coming out even hotter.
Keep the milk nearby and tantalize your taste buds tonight.
Bumblefoot hot sauce, available now at kajans.com.
At spacedoutradio.com, we are keeping you up to date on all the news with the SOR Newswire. Captain Shirk leads the team that is bringing you the news of the day and exclusive stories on everything paranormal and supernatural. It's free to read, it's updated daily, and it's right there for you. The SOR Newswire is a one-stop shop for the news of the day. Check it out at spacedoutradio.com today.
Cold drinks, great food, and the best music in Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is the place to be, open until 2 a.m. nightly. Everything on the menu starts at just $6.95. Who serves food that cheap anymore? At the Moose, you'll never know who you'll run into. Rock stars, actors, athletes. It's the place everyone wants to be. So join us at the Moose Vancouver, the official party bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Hey, space travelers, this is John Resig, founder of the Chive and Chive Charities. If you know anything about our website, you know we like to do things a little differently. We're not some faceless organization collecting money for a nebulous cause. Our donor dollars go directly toward life-improving items. Then we give those items directly to an underdog who needs it most. To become a donor with Spaced Out Radio's official charity, Chive Charities, just go to chivecharities.org/donate.
Hey everybody, the SOR Space Travelers is open. For just $5 a month, you can hang out with Dave and our crew privately in our members-only section. With your signing, you'll receive newsletters on what's going on with Spaced Out Radio. You'll have direct contact with the host during the show in our chat, live streaming videos, and a great forum for your posts and more. Become a space traveler now at spacedoutradio.com.
Are you looking for great advertising value for your company? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. We have a multitude of places to get your name out there, including commercial ads during the show, special promotions, and banners on our website. Our audience is proven to support the companies that support our show. We can make your budget work for you. So for more information, please contact us at sales@spacedoutradio.com.
Move over, brother, and let me own Saturday night.
This is Rich Giordano, and I'm inviting you to tune on in to Spaced Out Saturdays starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, 12 a.m. Eastern, where I'm going to bust open the lids on everything paranormal. Why? Because we want answers, and I'm the guy who's going to deliver those answers to you. Join the chat rooms, and we'll see you this Saturday. Just be there. No, really.
we're adding to the entertainment online for Spaced Out Radio. I'm Amber Beckrud, and I want to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out Cryptid Tales, where I will take you on a journey into some of the strangest legends and lore from around the world, relaying the stories to you of the strange creatures and experiences that people have had throughout time. You can find Cryptid Tales at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. And while you're there, don't forget to check out our free archives and leave a comment. See you there.
Past the halfway point of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to remind all of you that if you have missed portions of this show or others, you can check out our free archives at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. Lots of things for you to check out there. You can do so while you're listening to the show. Tonight we are talking with author Matthew L. Swayne. He's got a trio of haunted music books: Haunted Rock and Roll, More Haunted Rock and Roll, and Haunted Country Music. They can all be found on Amazon, and we're having a lot of fun tonight talking about the ghosts of music. Matthew, welcome back.
Thank you very much.
Jim Morrison was an anomaly of his own, and he really, really tried to show his spiritual side. He was always trying to find that higher zen, and higher he usually went. Eventually, it ended up killing him in France, and, you know, there's some mystery behind his death, but there's also been talk that he communicated with spirits, that he was a UFO buff as well, as that comes into play. What did you learn about Jim Morrison of the Doors?
Yeah, I learned so much about Jim Morrison, far more than I expected. And of course, there's this apocryphal tale that he used to tell that, you know, I have a lot of stories in these books about rock stars who become ghosts. He's the only guy that actually claimed he was possessed by ghosts. And his story is that he was a Navy brat, and his family was in the moving from the West Coast to the East Coast, where his dad was a rapidly rising officer in the Navy. And during this journey, they went through the Southwest. I think it was in New Mexico where this happened, that they came by, as they were driving, they came across a car crash. And outside of the car crash, there were a few bodies of Native Americans who perished in this accident. And Jim Morrison would later tell the story as his father drove the car past these bodies, he felt the spirits of these Native Americans possess him. And he claimed that that was really his first introduction to shamanism. And if you watch a lot of his shows after that, when he was the lead singer of the Doors, there is kind of this shamanistic quality that Jim Morrison has. And he was very influenced by Native American religion, Native American icons and art, all sort of show in both his stage show and is also in one of the movies he produced when he was a film student. So he was very deeply involved with the occult and the supernatural. And I, just as an aside, I saw that on one of these Antique Road shows, one of Jim Morrison's college roommates had a book that Jim gave him when he was going to college, and he had inscribed it to him. And the book was just was an occult book, a book about magic. So he was deeply involved in this. And you know, then after he passes, he is probably one of the most prolific ghosts in haunted rock and roll. And in fact, one of my favorite stories in haunted rock and roll is a story about how Jim Morrison haunts a bathroom in a Mexican restaurant. And this story is that there's a restaurant, and I think it was, I want to say Monterey, but I might be wrong on that. But this Mexican restaurant, the customers kept complaining that when they were in the bathroom, the door would shake. And then some people claimed to hear breathing while they were in there. And in other cases, there was the sound of they could hear strange sounds while they were in this bathroom. And the connection with Jim Morrison is, it just so happens that this bathroom probably would have been where the vocal booth was when this building was essentially owned by the Doors as their headquarters. So the connection is that this is Jim Morrison who haunts this bathroom. I could quickly kind of debunk that and say, well, the owner was probably just trying to get attention to his restaurant and get some customers. But according to the story that I read, he was actually trying to get rid of the spirit because it was driving away customers. So that's another great Jim Morrison ghost story.
Let's head over to more haunted rock and roll, your second book on this subject, because we would be remiss if we didn't talk about John Lennon. Very spiritual person, very on par with believing in UFOs and aliens coming to Earth. Talked very publicly about his sighting, I believe, in 1974 while in New York. What is very haunted and spiritual about John?
Yeah, John just, John and the Beatles at large, I think, were the ones who really maybe didn't introduce spirituality as part of rock and roll, but definitely were the ones that spotlighted it, especially when they were, involved with the Maharishi and transcendental meditation, and George Harrison, of course, was deeply interested in Indian religion. So there is just kind of this spiritual aura, and they were all, I would consider them spiritual seekers. So there's a lot of elements of the John Lennon connection to the supernatural that I write about. And, there are ghost stories about John Lennon. There's a story, especially in the Dakota, there's one story that Yoko Ono woke up and she went to the one room where the famous white piano is, and she said that John was there at the piano and basically gave her a comforting message. There's another ghost story that someone who was in a hotel next to the Dakota looked out the window early one morning and saw what he thought was John Lennon standing outside the gate. I, could debunk that and say, well, it could be someone just looking like him. But this person described the apparition as being kind of encased in a halo of light. So there are a lot of other kind of minor ghost stories. There's one ghost story that Robin Givens was living in a home that, and Robin Givens, of course, is an actress from the 80s, 90s, and she was in the midst of a breaking up with Mike Tyson, and she was living in a house that John Lennon lived in during his what was called Lost Weekend phase in California, and she said that she could hear the Beatles songs almost continually in that house, which she claimed to be haunted by John Lennon. And then John Lennon's girlfriend at the time, May Pang, has had several incidences where she's claimed that she has maybe not seen the ghost of John Lennon, but felt like he was there through various signs. It was May Pang, I believe, that was also accompanying John Lennon when he saw that UFO in New York City, which, to me is just a very startling sighting, because he was able to describe it in very graphic detail. This is a John Lennon that at that time I think probably was looking for signs like this. I don't think this was quite what he was expecting. But, his description sort of rolls out things like helicopters and airplanes over New York City. And I also found that during that same time that John Lennon claimed to see this UFO, there were other reports that were phoned into the police and emergency services of people seeing the strange lights in the sky. So John really kind of runs the gamut of the supernatural lore of rock and roll.
Do you think he is haunting any places right now? Maybe the area where he was shot and killed?
That seems to be the prime area for these ghost stories, is primarily right outside of the Dakota. Or inside of it too. And by the way, the Dakota itself has a supernatural legacy of its own. There are stories that builders saw the ghosts of children there. There was also, I think, a ghost of a boy who was killed when he tried to cross the street. He was run over. The building itself was used in Rosemary's Baby, the horror film. So John probably has a lot of company if he's there.
Just a haunted area in general.
Yes.
Weird.
It was named Dakota.
Okay. How come?
It was named Dakota, by the way, because when it was built, it was so far out on the west of Manhattan that they considered it like the Dakota Territory. So there's a little trivia for you.
Thank you for sharing that. Appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about Bon Scott, the legendary original singer for AC/DC. Incredible lyrics, incredible singer, very high pitched. I mean, I don't know how to explain him. I mean, Brian Johnson, the current singer, is fantastic, but he's no Bon Scott. Let's just be honest with everyone there, And so I'm just curious what your thoughts are about the strangeness around Bon Scott.
Yeah, and also the thing about Bon Scott was just his stage presence. Every account that I read about Bon Scott, that comes up about how he can just, dominate the stage. But if you really want to talk to someone who's had occult run-ins with Bon Scott, I would suggest you get a hold of Susan Messina, who I talked to for this book, and she's a rock journalist, and she is one of AC/DC's primary biographers. And I had just heard through the grapevine that she had she actually connected with AC/DC on their first tour of America, where they were still just establishing themselves as a band here. And I think they hit a bunch of clubs, and she went to one as a journalist to cover the event in I think it was Madison, Wisconsin. And she told me she had an instant rapport with the band, and especially with Bon Scott. And as she was writing these stories about AC/DC for her biography, she had a few run-ins. She had lights turning on and off. She first blamed her husband. Turns out her husband was nowhere near. She felt Bon Scott's presence. She had dreams about Bon Scott where there seemed to be some type of message being transferred. So there are a number of those stories that I found fascinating, and I also thought that Susan was just such a great, credible witness that I added to the book. So there's definitely some that's one of those presences that doesn't go away. It's that type of magnetism that really seems to affect whether there's going to be a ghost story about that celebrity or not.
Well, I mean, the entire Back in Black album, Brian Johnson's first album with the band, was all dedicated, and that's what the song "Hell's Bells" is about. Is about Bon Scott's death, and it's just amazing. The one thing I always loved about Bon Scott is the bagpipes. How do you throw bagpipes into rock and roll? Bon Scott figured out how.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's another story that you mentioned, Brian Johnson. It pinged my memory, is that there's a story that he was connected with Bon Scott too after his death spiritually. There was one story that he was very, very nervous about, taking on the role as lead singer of AC/DC, and that he had some type of spiritual event that happened where he was given confidence, and he never really explained it to him, but some of his friends believed that he had some type of interaction with the spirit of Bon Scott, who basically gave him the okay to try it out. And I think he did okay.
I think he did too. I mean, they've had three great singers, if you include the legend Axl Rose, when Brian Johnson started losing his hearing there for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Yeah, and I also didn't know that Bon is I should have known, but he's of Scottish descent, which, of course, that's where the Bon Scott comes from, and also the bagpipes.
Absolutely. It's fantastic. I mean, can you imagine that song without the bagpipes? Totally off topic
now that
and
you
random.
mention it,
you can't.
Yeah, I can't.
The bagpipes make the song.
And you heard the joke about why people march when they're playing the bagpipes, right?
No.
To get away from the racket.
Oh,
it's to get away from the racket.
Would not surprise me. Would not surprise me at all. Matthew Swayne is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. I think we got enough time. We got about 5.5 minutes here, so we can sneak in another one. And, let's go through this. Alice Cooper.
Yeah, Alice Cooper. Alice Cooper, that's a great story about how he was just getting out of rehab, and I think it was Joe Tyler, I believe, from Aerosmith, had decided to get together. He was also got sober, and they decided they were going to go to the country and start work right away. That's what they thought. And the Alice's manager had a mansion outside of New York City, kind of away in the country. And Alice Cooper tells the story that these supernatural events occurred almost instantly when they got there. In fact, Alice would start to unpack his bags. He would leave the room, come back, and the bags would be repacked. And then some of the other people in the group also were claiming to have similar run-ins. Things would move. They would feel presences, and the band did not know the background of this house, but apparently it had been rumored to be haunted for a while. And at one point, Alice says that he hears a noise in the basement, and it gets louder and louder, and it definitely has a pattern to it, that it's not just like rattling pipes or anything like that. Alice Cooper goes all, ghost hunter. He and the rest of the guys go down the basement, and he actually feels that he actually says that someone touched him down there. He felt not just a presence, sort of symbolically, but felt hands on him, and he got out of there. And then he talked to his manager, his manager basically said, "Oh yeah, my mother had a couple run-ins with the paranormal while she was there too." So it ends up that kind of Alice is not super pleased with his manager at the time.
Yeah, go stick me in the haunted place. That's right. Good manager.
Right after I get sober.
Exactly. Not to bring him back. Now, Alice is actually quite an anomaly because he's actually the only rock star ever to be endorsed by a golf product because he's a big-time golfer and sponsored by Callaway. There's my sports trivia for the day.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story about just how Alice Cooper kind of generated his own persona and his manager. And I'm blanking on his manager's name, but his manager is absolutely fascinating. And apparently the manager was told that he should manage Alice Cooper by our friend Jimi Hendrix.
Really?
Yeah. And the other fact about Alice Cooper is I think his last album was named Paranormal. So he definitely has some connection to the supernatural too, or as the story would suggest, he kind of is a believer.
I also heard that he is also born again.
I have heard that as well, and maybe that explains the connection too. Maybe he doesn't look at these things like sort of maybe the way I do as manifestations of some type of spirituality. He might see these as kind of demonic or spiritual on another level.
Well, who knows? I mean, when you're dealing with the horror side, as the persona of Alice Cooper is, you would expect that some sort of tulpa-like creature would come up and start, rattling some stage equipment. That's for sure.
Right on. Yep. His manager's name was Shep Gordon, and he has a great book. He talks a lot about these early rock and especially the early heavy metal days. I think you would really enjoy it.
Well,
I think it's called
metal.
Supermensch.
I like good metal.
Supermensch is the name of it. Yeah.
Not going to lie. Old Davey likes some good metal. Really do. The best part about it now is, my son, who's 6 years old, and he is turning into an absolute metalhead as well. God bless him for that. I'm doing some parenting right here, my friend. Doing some parenting right.
Good for you.
Well, I mean, it's a good friend of mine. He's been on the show before, Jamie Sexton. Him and I were talking before the show tonight. And Jamie helped approve Santa Claus's choice for guitars for the little guy for Christmas.
Yeah.
And long story short, I'm like, hey, James, do you want to hear the boy play? And he's like, damn rights I do. I'm like, awesome. So literally my son, who doesn't know a chord, he just bangs on the strings. I don't really care. He starts hammering his guitar. That's all you need to do. And Jamie's just like, he goes, that's a good kid right there. That's a good kid.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah. So I enjoy it. Hey, Matt, I'm going to get you to hold on here. We're going to go to break at the top of the hour. More haunted ghost stories from the music world. Author Matthew L. Swayne joins us. We're having a hell of a time tonight. We get to have our horns up all night long as we're talking haunted rock and roll on Spaced Out Radio next.
Hello, this is your guitar man, Ron Bumblefoot Thal, and I have to tell you, I love the response I get for Little Brother is Watching from Spaced Out Radio fans. It's amazing how music can inspire and make people think deeper about what's going on in the supernatural world. You can head over to my website, bumblefoot.com, to check out my music, my guitar workshops, my touring, even check out some of the hot sauces that I'm working on. And make sure you keep on listening, because with Spaced Out Radio, you know Little Brother is watching.
A little bit of science, a little bit of skepticism. Add a dash of snark and you have the makings of Spaced Out Sundays with me, Everett Thiener. Together we will look into the reality of the paranormal with an open eye and rational thought. Oh, did I mention there'll be plenty of woo as well? Your time spent with Spaced Out Sundays will make the night even better. To Chat rooms are open 9:06 p.m. Pacific, 12:06 a.m. Eastern, right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Hello everyone, this is Ryan Stacy from the Experiencer Support Association, otherwise known as TESSA. We're glad to team up with Spaced Out Radio to help investigate your experiences on the SOR Sightlines Report. Together, we'll investigate the strange sightings and occurrences you've had. We're looking for answers just like you. So fill out a Sightlines report on the Spaced Out Radio website and let's figure out what's going on together.
Looking for creative ways to get your company out in the public? How about advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Our sales department is waiting to hear from you, and we can work around any budget. From commercial spots to banners to special promotions, there are many opportunities to get your name and product out to our SOR listeners. For a price guide and more information, please contact us at sales@spacedoutradio.com.
We all know on Spaced Out Radio we love a good beard and mustache, so why not take care of your facial hair with Mighty Moose Beard Oil? Made in Canada, we're taking care of beards and stashes around the world. We use 100% natural ingredients with our oils and balms to make your whiskers feel silky smooth. Use promo code SOR2019 at MightyMooseBeard.com today.
Hello, Space Travelers. It's me again, Carl. Don't forget to join the Space Travelers Club for just $5 a month and follow Spaced Out Radio on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Our Instagram, Dave Scott SOR. Our Facebook page is Spaced Out Radio Show. Our archives are free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Come woo it up with Spaced Out Radio today. Bye!
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
Move over, brother, and let me own Saturday night.
This is Rich Giordano, and I'm inviting you to tune on in to Spaced Out Saturdays starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, 12 a.m. Eastern, where I'm going to bust open the lids on everything paranormal. Why? Because we want answers, and I'm the guy who's going to deliver those answers to you. Join the chat rooms, and we'll see you this Saturday. Just be there. No, really.
For the price of 1 cup of coffee a month, you can become an SOR Space Traveler. The Space Travelers Club is a place where you can interact with other listeners, either live during the show or on our great forum. We want your stories, pictures, comments, and ideas. You'll get live video streams, exclusive content, and be a part of our newsletter. Stay in touch with everything SOR. The Space Travelers Club is just $5 a month at spacedoutradio.com.
The SOR Vault is open for business, and do we have some cool swag for you to pick up? All you have to do is head over to our website and click on the SOR Vault. You have a variety of cool logos to choose from, and put them on anything you want. T-shirts, hoodies, hats, coffee mugs, you name it, we can get it to you. So do your shopping by supporting the store you love. Get your Spaced Out Radio swag at the SOR Vault today. We're adding to the entertainment online for Spaced Out Radio. I'm Amber Beckrud, and I want to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out Cryptid Tales, where I will take you on a journey into some of the strangest legends and lore from around the world, relaying the stories to you of the strange creatures and experiences that people have had throughout time. You can find Cryptid Tales at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio, and while you're there, don't forget to check out our free archives and leave a comment. See you there.
We are scouring the world for the most intriguing stories of your day. Take the time to read up on the SOR Newswire, where our team, led by Captain Shirk, will deliver to you some of the best paranormal and supernatural news, along with some stories that will blow your mind from the weird to the wacky. It's the news outside the news that piques interest, and that's what we're looking to deliver to you. The SOR Newswire, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Hey, space travelers, this is John Resig, founder of the Chive and Chive Charities. If you know anything about our website, you know we like to do things a little differently. We're not some faceless organization collecting money for a nebulous cause. Our donor dollars go directly toward life-improving items. Then we give those items directly to an underdog who needs it most. To become a donor with Spaced Out Radio's official charity, Chive Charities, just go to chivecharities.org/donate.
The party is always on at the Moose Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is where you want to be when visiting Canada's West Coast. Open until 2 a.m. nightly, the Moose cranks up the rock while serving some of the best-rated food in the city. The menu starts at $6.95. Why party anywhere else in Vancouver when the Moose is right there? Get your horns up and rock with the Moose, the official party bar of Spaced Out Radio.
I'm feeling a little spicy tonight. What to do? What to do?
Why not get Bumblefuck?
4 million Scoville units of pure hard rock. Bumblefoot hot sauces come in 3 flavors. The burning Bumble. Tone it down a bit with Bumblicious and throw the sauce on everything.
Spice it up. Bumble me, baby. Bumblefoot hot sauce. Get it today at kajans.com.
Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Hour number 3 of Spaced Out Radio tonight is underway. I am your host, Dave Scott. Thank you so much for joining us. We want to say hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates, KDNF AM 1560 in Dangerfield, Texas, WQEE 99.1 FM in Newnan, Georgia, UPRN 107.7 FM in New Orleans, KDUN AM 1030 in Reedsport, Oregon, and down in Ridgecrest, California, KZFX 93.7 FM. On the digital side, we're proud to recognize Kingdom of Nye Radio and Revolution Radio as our broadcast hosts. Remember, you can check out all of our archives for free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Samillimum is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets a password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We got a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, do a little shopping at the SOR Vault. You could grab a great book from We Read the Night. Join the Space Travelers for $5 a month, and Captain Shirk has you all up to date on the SOR Newswire. One of my favorite subjects we have ever covered on this show tonight, haunted rock and roll. And if you're a music fan like I am, you'll know this is some pretty cool stories put together by author Matthew L. Swayne. And yeah, we're definitely going to bring Matthew back. And I've already convinced Matthew that we're going to go the distance on this one. So even though his voice is starting to get a little scratchy, we're going to skip the news and the thought of the Dave tonight. We're going to go straight with Matthew right to the end because this is such an intriguing topic. Matthew, thanks for sharing your night with us.
Thank you very much. I did want to issue a correction. I think I said Aerosmith's Joe Tyler. I think I was smushing Joe Perry and Steven Tyler together. So it's actually Joe Perry who was involved with Alice Cooper in that haunted activity in upstate New York.
Oh, weird. Well, thank you for clarifying that. We appreciate that.
Sure.
Michael Jackson was an anomaly among artists. I mean, incredibly talented. All right. The Prince of Pop or King of Pop, whatever you want to call him. I was a big fan of his growing up. I mean, I don't think that you couldn't be. I mean, he was so entertaining and so loved for his music. His death was a tragedy. And I'll never forget, right after his death, when they were doing it, I believe it was a CNN reporter was doing a story in the Jackson home, and there was that big ghost video where people thought that was Michael's ghost walking across the hallway. Did you ever see that?
I did see that. In fact, there was allegedly 2 of those incidences. There was also incidents. There was also one on the Larry King show. Apparently, people saw the ghost of Michael Jackson. I think it was being. There were several interviews of. I think it was Jermaine Jackson being interviewed at Neverland, and a couple people in several of those different interviews saw what looked to be a figure walking behind Jermaine. And people say that it was the ghost of Michael Jackson. But of course, the ghost stories with Michael Jackson almost started immediately after news that he was either sick or dying started to sweep through LA. There were people who said they saw his ghost near the hospital. There were people who said they saw orbs of light actually on top of the ambulance when they were taking him to the hospital. So his haunted history starts almost immediately on that news. And then later there were stories that Michael Jackson had a house in L.A., and then after he died, months, maybe even years after he died, the neighbors there complained about hearing music coming from the house. And they would get the police, and the police would investigate, and there was no one in the house or no one around the house. They couldn't really prove that it was like some type of practical joke. So people will always think that that's somehow related to the ghost of Michael Jackson. LaToya, Michael Jackson's sister, said that she heard this strange noise coming from a room in her house above her head, upstairs in the house. And it sounded like someone was tap dancing. And that was the room where Michael Jackson would practice dancing, according to LaToya. She also claimed that her dog would bark at that room as well, like it was on alert at some presence in there. So he has quite a legacy now too, in maybe he's the prince of haunted pop.
Do you think a ghost like that, with all the troublesome recent history that Michael Jackson had, that maybe, we talk about these lost souls, that maybe he is a lost soul still trying to find out who he is, and that's why he's still here?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of different theories about why these ghosts, especially why rock and roll ghosts appear, and certainly one theory is that these people like Kurt Cobain, like Michael Jackson, like Jim Morrison, are what you would consider lost souls. They seem to have always not fit in to the mass of humanity, and has always stood out. So there's certainly one theory is that this kind of tragedy, this kind of unfulfilled promise, keeps them on the earth plane. That came up a lot during the research. The other thing is, another reason is people say that they, when you talk about these rock stars, you're always talking about, huge personalities. The word that comes up when you talk about Elvis or Michael Jackson or Jim Morrison is larger than life. It's too big for life. And in fact, some of these ghost stories seem to represent that. Some of this ghost lore seems to represent the idea that their personalities are so big that they either, if you want to take a supernatural or a paranormal whack at it, you would say that their personality embeds itself in kind of time, space. Other people would probably say that, their personalities are so big that you want them around, you want to keep them around. So these ghost stories that people tell about Michael Jackson and the stories that I write about are one way that we approach not letting that personality get away from us.
I would fully agree on that. Let's get to another one here, because Dee Snider of Twisted Sister. All right, I laugh when I say this because I literally just introduced my son about a week ago to the video of We're Not Going to Take It. You know, where the old man is screaming at the kid in the bedroom, and then he goes, I want to rock. And my son just loves that video now. I think I've seen that video more in the last week than I have in the last 25 years. And I forgot how funny it was. But with Dee Snider, what happened with him?
Yeah, well, first of all, you're just a great dad to introduce him to that. That will become your son's anthem, and I think that's great. What a way to prepare this kid for life. I believe that wholeheartedly. But
Appreciate that.
So we'll frame Dee Snider's story with the fact that whatever you say about Dee Snider or Twisted Sister, the thing that always struck me about Dee Snider was his integrity, and he just seemed to be a really good guy who had his feet on the ground. And he was an admitted skeptic before this incident happened. But what happened was his brother-in-law was murdered. I think either going to work or on the way back from work was shot and killed. And they never, at that point, found the murderer, I think. And, of course, Dee Snider's wife was just beyond upset, beyond sad. And she was also bent on revenge. She wanted justice. She wanted this murderer found. And Dee Snider said almost immediately after this incident, strange things began to happen at their house. In one case, Dee and his one son were driving they were driving in the driveway, and they got out of the car, and they could hear this drumming, which incensed the one son because that was his drum set, and he figured it was his brother who was playing the drums. So he goes into the house livid, and the brother was nowhere to be found, nowhere near these drums. They were, almost playing themselves. And there were some other things that would happen throughout. The television turned off and on, almost on command, like it was trying to communicate. They called in a psychic. And eventually what they realized was that it was, they believed it was the brother-in-law trying to communicate them, trying to get justice. And, so he turns from being a committed skeptic to being a believer in this. And I think and I might be getting this story incorrect, but I do believe they did find the killer. And apparently the activity in the house subsided over time.
Almost like now I can rest.
Right. That's a story like that, yeah.
You also have a chapter in this book about the women of haunted rock and roll. Now, there have been some kick-ass ladies in rock and roll throughout its history, from Janis Joplin to Hart, Pat Benatar, Lita Ford, Joan Jett, just to name a few. What's the stories about the women of haunted rock and roll?
Well, there are several, and I wanted to include that because, especially my first volume seemed to be pretty male-dominated. I mean, we had Janis Joplin in there, but, I went out to try to find some of the women of rock and roll and the women of pop music and to see what their experiences were. And probably the most famous is Cher. I believe that her Malibu home was haunted by her former husband, Sonny Bono. And one of those strangest things about that was the chandelier light would turn on and off, but Cher said there was no power source to that chandelier. And she thinks it was kind of the zany type of humor that Sonny was capable of. So that was, one of the women of rock and roll that I wrote about. Keisha was another one who she kind of took it to a different level. Most people see ghosts. She claimed to have sex with a ghost.
No way.
And she was.
That's good woo right there. Hold on right there. That's good woo. We got to go down this road.
Yeah. She was living in a flop house at the time with a bunch of people, and then claimed that she had this, that there was a ghost in the house, and that they had sex. So you got that one. And then Miley Cyrus is another one. She said that there was an apartment that she stayed in. I believe it was in London when she was touring. This ghost would turn the heat on the water while her sister was showering. She saw a ghost of a young boy. She had these experiences. And then there's a final one with Adele, who claimed her mansion was renting was haunted as well. And I don't think she stayed there very long. So those are just some of the stories that I cover in the book.
My goodness. So these ladies who are having these experiences, how do most of these artists treat, never mind just the ladies, but how do most of these artists treat these circumstances because they are so odd?
That's a great question. I'm trying to think to see if there is a pattern, because most of them, and I'll even say Keisha, I know the story sounds funny, but she, you do get the sense that they've had these serious encounters, and then they almost kind of mask it in the humor of it, because it's almost like they're feeling exposed. That's a lot of times when the celebrities, in the rock star celebrities, they have this, they aren't afraid to put the information out there, but they try to coach it in kind of this, it was kind of funny type thing. But we really don't know how they really took it, because the one thing that I've learned writing all these books, you can't approach these stories as merely entertainment. As everyone loves a good ghost story. But what I've found is that when I've talked to people and they've shared their stories with me, some of these people, these are experiences that really change their lives, change their philosophy and their outlook on life. I think, when we talk about Dee Snider, that's a case of a guy being committed, skeptic, and suddenly having his world kind of turn upside down. That what I try to do is try to find many different natural explanations, and I'm sure Dee probably tried to do the same. But you really get the sense that, so I have moved away, my approach has moved away from just entertainment to, I try to be very respectful, especially if I'm talking to someone, and I use a lot of like paranormal investigators. I respect their experience. And I think when you hear some of these ghost stories and some of these rock stars tell their ghost stories, and they're trying to be kind of funny and humorous about it, I think maybe that masks underlying seriousness of what they experienced.
Have you noticed any patterns regarding the musicians? Like, say, for instance, the hauntings that they've experienced or the ghosts that they've become from those that were, say, anywhere from 40 to 70 years ago comparatively to those that are recently deceased?
Another really great question. There does seem to be, I would say that the main difference is that now the approach is much more. So when they were talking about connecting with Kurt Cobain, a lot of these paranormal investigators are using things like ghost box and electronic devices and things like that Whereas, the earlier ghosts, the ghosts of Jim Morris and Janis Joplin, you find the stories are more about connecting with a presence or a feeling and things like that. So it almost weirdly feels more scientific now than it did, let's say, 30 years ago.
So for the ghosts themselves, I kind of look at it like back then when music was really hopping and everybody wanted to be a musical artist, say through the 50s, 60s, and even into the 70s, it wasn't such a corporate type business as we see today where, everything is regulated and legislated. And, maybe I think it's personally to a fault, but it is what it is. We don't have control of that. And that's kind of the reason why I'm thinking is if the spirits of those who are, from the haunted past are more relaxed, more chill with what's going on, because that's kind of the era that they came from, comparatively to, say, someone who had to suffer through the more corporate side of the music industry.
I mean, I think you raise a really good point. I think that people kind of forget just how homegrown rock and roll was. Remember, the Doors didn't even have a manager. They kind of handled affairs by themselves. And also remember, one book that I'm considering about writing is a business book about rock and roll is really the ultimate startup. Before rock and roll, you had these huge bands and huge salaries. And, here comes Elvis with a guitar player, a bassist, and, he's strumming an acoustic. And they changed the world. So I think that's a fair point.
All right, let's move on here, because I want to get into some of these creepy legends and curses that we're going to be discussing. Actually, just looking at the clock, we only got about a minute and a little bit before we got to go to break at the bottom of the hour. But when we come back, we're going to get into the curses and some of these strange legends that are out there regarding rock and roll. Are musicians superstitious? Say as superstitious as sports athletes?
I would say yes.
Would that come into play in a lot of these circumstances?
It sure could, just the belief in it, and there is a definite connection between belief and consciousness and reality that a lot of theorists talk about.
Yeah. I love the conspiracy side of everything and that sort of image, because I know for me, going back to my hockey playing days and baseball playing days as a kid, I was so superstitious, mainly in hockey, but even in radio sometimes I notice little things and little quirks that I do. So that's kind of the reason why I was asking that question. But I'm going to get you to hold on, Matt. We're going to go another 30 minutes with author Matthew L. Swayne. Haunted rock and roll, curses, legends, next on the mighty SOR. I'm so enjoying this show tonight. I hope you guys are too. I really do hope all of our listeners are having as much fun as I am. I think Matt is, because he decided he's going to stick around a little bit more. We're going to take this to the top of the hour. Stay tuned. More Spaced Out Radio right after this.
A little bit of science, a little bit of skepticism. Add a dash of snark and you have the makings of Spaced Out Sundays with me, Everett Thielen. Together we will look into the reality of the paranormal with an open eye and rational thought. Oh, did I mention there'll be plenty of woo as well? Your time spent with Spaced Out Sundays will make the night even better. The chat rooms are open, 9:06 p.m. Pacific, 12:06 a.m. Eastern, right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Move over, brother, and let me own Saturday night.
This is Rich Giordano, and I'm inviting you to tune on in to Spaced Out Saturdays starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, 12 a.m. Eastern, where I'm going to bust open the lids on everything paranormal. Why? Because we want answers, and I'm the guy who's going to deliver those answers to you. Join the chat rooms, and we'll see you this Saturday. Just be there. No, really.
Hello, this is your guitar man, Ron Bumblefoot Thal, and I have to tell you, I love the response I get for Little Brother is Watching from Spaced Out Radio fans. It's amazing how music can inspire and make people think deeper about what's going on in the supernatural world. You can head over to my website, bumblefoot.com, to check out my music, my guitar workshops, my touring, even check out some of the hot sauces that I'm working on. And make sure you keep on listening, because with Spaced Out Radio, you know Little Brother is watching.
Are you looking for great advertising value for your company? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. We have a multitude of places to get your name out there, including commercial ads during the show, special promotions, and banners on our website. Our audience is proven to support the companies that support our show. We can make your budget work for you. So for more information, please contact us at sales@spacedoutradio.com.
You wanted new SOR gear, and now you can have it. The SOR Vault is fully stocked with t-shirts, hats, hoodies, mugs, and everything in between, with great logos for you to choose from. So head on over to spacedoutradio.com, click on the SOR Vault, and go shopping. Pricing is quite affordable, and you can look good representing your favorite show. So go to our website and pick up your new SOR wear at the SOR Vault today.
Cold drinks, great food, and the best music in Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is the place to be. Open until 2 a.m. nightly. Everything on the menu starts at just $6.95. Who serves food that cheap anymore? At the Moose, you'll never know who you'll run into. Rock stars, actors, athletes. It's the place everyone wants to be. So join us at the Moose Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver, the official party bar of Spaced Out Radio.
We're adding to the entertainment online for Spaced Out Radio. I'm Amber Beckrud, and I want to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out Cryptid Tales, where I will take you on a journey into some of the strangest legends and lore from around the world, relaying the stories to you of the strange creatures and experiences that people have had throughout time. You can find Cryptid Tales at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. And while you're there, don't forget to check out our free archives and leave a comment. See you there.
We all know on Spaced Out Radio we love a good beard and mustache, so why not take care of your facial hair with Mighty Moose Beard Oil? Made in Canada, we're taking care of beards and stashes around the world. We use 100% natural ingredients with our oils and balms to make your whiskers feel silky smooth. Use promo code SOR2019 at MightyMooseBeard.com today.
Hello, Space Travelers. It's me again, Carl. Don't forget to join the Space Travelers Club for just $5 a month and follow Spaced Out Radio on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Our Instagram, Dave Scott SOR. Our Facebook page is Spaced Out Radio Show. Our archives are free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Come woo it up with Spaced Out Radio today. Bye!
Hey everybody, the SOR Space Travelers is open. For just $5 a month, you can hang out with Dave and our crew privately in our members-only section. With your signing, you'll receive newsletters on what's going on with Spaced Out Radio. You'll have direct contact with the host during the show in our chat, live streaming videos, and a great forum for your posts and more. Become a Space Traveler now at spacedoutradio.com.
At spacedoutradio.com, we are keeping you up to date on all the news with the SOR Newswire. Captain Shirk leads the team that is bringing you the news of the day and exclusive stories on everything paranormal and supernatural. It's free to read, it's updated daily, and it's right there for you. The SOR Newswire is a one-stop shop for the news of the day. Check it out at spacedoutradio.com today.
Hey Spaced Out Radio fans, it's John Resig, founder of the Chive and Chive Charities. Our goal is to make the life of veterans, first responders, and those with rare medical conditions 10% happier. We do this by donating one grant item, ranging from dance to therapy programs to prosthetic limbs, to those who need it most. To contribute to Spaced Out Radio's official charity, head over to chivecharities.org and become a donor today.
If you like it hot, real hot, then heat up your meals with Bumblefoot hot sauce.
Get your Bumblefoot hot sauce today. The sauce, Bumblicious, and the 4 million Scoville unit Bumble. We're going in hot, real hot, coming out even hotter.
Keep the milk nearby and tantalize your taste buds tonight.
Bumblefoot hot sauce, available now at kajans.com.
We've rounded third. We're heading for home tonight on Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. Thank you so much for joining us. Want to remind all of you that if you missed most of this show or others, you can check out our free archives at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, do a little shopping at the SOR Vault. Grab a great book from We Read the Night. Join the Space Travelers for $5 a month. And, of course, you can also read up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Now, we're skipping the Newswire tonight and the thought of the day because we got author Matthew L. Swayne talking haunted rock and roll all night long, and this is a subject that I just absolutely love. So I made the executive decision that I needed more. I needed more cowbell. Matthew, welcome back.
Thanks a lot. I've never been referred to as cowbell, but that's good.
All right. Well, we'll make that happen. We will make that happen. I do. You know what? I've just actually made an executive decision here too, for all of our listeners tuning on in. I think I'm going to do an after party show on YouTube as well, on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. So after we're done tonight's show, give me a few minutes to get set up and relaxed and chill and do my hair and look pretty for you guys. And we'll do an after hours Ask Me Anything party on YouTube right after this show. We'll see how long we go. It's Friday night. What the hell? All right, Matthew, right before the break, we were talking about curses in the music industry and legends that go along with that. Are there many musicians out there who believe that they were cursed during their careers?
Cursed? Huh. I mean, I think the Crossroad curse speaks to that, but that would imply some volition on their part to take part in the curse. But I did want to, I think the kind of common perception of the rock star is that they look at they tend to be on more of what we would consider the left-hand path, more of the Satanism and demonic and deals with the devil and things like that. But I also wanted to point out that there is really a strong movement that I kind of found in spite of myself, a strong movement of what we would consider positive thinking and new thought. Rather than feeling like they were cursed, a lot of these rock stars use that type of positive energy to direct their career. And I point out a few in more haunted rock and roll, but one of the practitioners of this would be John Lennon, and whether he, did it consciously or subconsciously, I really don't know. But one example of this was that John Lennon.
Oh, where'd you go? Your phone cut out there for a quick second.
Oh, sorry. Am I on now?
Yeah, you're fine now.
Oh, okay. So So John Lennon, when the Beatles first started out, they were really considered kind of a bum band. They were not held in high regard at all. And they got a lot of, crappy gigs, and it was really rough there for a while. And there were many moments where the band could very easily have split up. They were dark times. But John Lennon would lead them through this chant, and he would say, where are we going, fellas? And they would say the top, and then he would say, what top is that? And they'd say the toppermost of the poppermost. And it became this autosuggestion. And John Lennon was a big believer in this positive thinking technique. And he would write about probably one of the most famous practitioners of autosuggestion was a Frenchman named Émile Couillet. And he was the one who came up with this every day and every way I'm getting better and better. And that's actually a lyric in a John Lennon song. So he had was a more, I would consider, a positive thinking practitioner. And then there was Elvis Presley, who practiced creative visualization. He would talk about how he would dream that he was a superhero. When Elvis died, they found a lot of books that were related to the positive thinking movement. And one fascinating fact that I found is when Presley was on tour, he took 2 trunks full of books. He had about 300 books, and a lot of those included books like Autobiography of a Yogi, The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale. He was also interested in science and health with Key to the Scriptures, which is a Christian Science tract. There's another funny story that he became so interested in the spiritual movement and in positive thinking that Colonel Tom Parker threatened to burn the books. He was so upset because he thought it had undue influence on Elvis. And just one more is that Bismuth, who was from the Monkees, wrote a terrific book about, it was called Infinite Tuesday, and he talks about his belief in Christian Science and the positive thinking movement and how it's affected his life. So rather than these rock stars thinking that they were cursed, it feels like they used practices to make sure they were blessed.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Because you don't think of rock stars as people who would go down that spiritual road, unless it's like the band Ghost these days and just singing about the devil and everything, Mm-hmm. But I mean, it is intriguing how these type of curses or these type of spiritual practitioners actually play a huge role in what a lot of these artists are doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say that there seems to be, maybe these are not curses, but when you kind of retroactively analyze the some of these rock stars who met tragic deaths and tragic ends, weirdly there are signs within the music and with some of the things that these artists have done to indicate that they that sort of tip their hat to the fate that they were going to experience. And I'm thinking right now of Lynyrd Skynyrd, in a plane crash. They had, I think their last album was this named Soul Survivor, which indicates, and I think as I'm looking at the album cover in my mind, I'm seeing flames, and it seems to relate to that crash. They have that lyric, "The smell of death around you." So these are almost like forecasting their own demise. Curtis Knight, who we mentioned before, said that Jimi Hendrix was messing around with one of his songs when those guys were jamming, and he has a line. Jimmy sings a line, 5 years. This he said, he's not gone, he's just dead. And 5 years after he makes up this lyric, he does die. in a drug overdose. Eddie Cochran, who was a friend of Buddy Holly, he had a song, 3 Stars, about Buddy Holly and the folks that died in that plane crash. And Eddie Cochran's last song was 3 Steps to Heaven, and he recorded it with the Crickets, believe it or not. So there are a lot of examples that I bring up in the book of this seemingly this ability to forecast their own demise.
All right, let's go to a question on Twitter. This one comes from Greco. Have you heard of any ghost activity associated with rappers Tupac Shakur and Notorious B.I.G.?
I have heard rumors of that. I have heard some rumors that people have interacted with the ghost of Tupac, I think. And I was trying to find something for more haunted rock and roll about that, but all I could get was really just kind of very thin veiled references to these incidents. I couldn't find a primary source to really verify it. So that's that. I think there are stories out there. I imagine they're right now kind of in that sphere of oral tradition.
All right. You have in your first book, Haunted Rock and Roll, you have a topic about aliens abducting future rock stars. And, we have talked on this show a number of times about Sammy Hagar talking and singing and writing songs about his E.T. abductions. When he was with Van Halen, the song Love Walks In comes to mind. And if you haven't reread those lyrics, I highly suggest you do. How much has E.T. or alien abduction played a role in rock and roll?
Far, far more than what I thought, because I think I barely touched on it in the original volume where I talked about James Sullivan. I think that's the one rock. He never really became a rock star. He was sort of on his way to Nashville to try his hand at becoming a rock star, and then he mysteriously disappears. But he had a huge interest in UFOs, and it made some people think that he was abducted. But then, that inspired me, and especially learning some more about Jimi Hendrix and his UFO experiences, which we already discussed, made me want to dive a little deeper into it. And it's just fascinating how often UFOs and alien abduction crop up in rock and roll supernatural lore, as well as you said, lyrics and things like that. But one of the more fascinating examples of this for me was the band Moody Blues. And according to some of the members of the band, they left a show and they were following their equipment van in a car, and a light came overhead. And initially, some of the members of the band thought it was just a radio tower that they had mistaken for some type of aircraft. So they stopped to take a look, and according to the members of the band, this glowing object came closer and closer to them, and they observed it. But when they got home, they realized that they had this rather quick trip had taken 3 hours longer than they expected. And so throughout their, they reference it in a few of their songs, and they actually talked in the article that I cite in the book about how it really changed the music. They kind of went from what I guess I would consider a mod band more towards a prog rock band. So that's one of the cases of that I explored about rock stars and aliens. But Sammy Hagar, I did find some stories about him as well. There was one incident where I think he was sleeping or napping, and he woke up and he looked out the window and he saw these two figures in black in a field some distance from his house. and he felt like they downloaded information into his brain, is the way he described it, and that helped him turn into a rock star. Trying to think of some other ones. I think Jerry Garcia from the Grateful Dead, he had a couple experiences with aliens, and even he claimed to have an experience with extra-dimensional beings. One of the first stories he talks about, he was driving down the road, and I think he was with a member of another band, and he said that they turned around the corner and there was a huge hole in the sky, and that light was shining through, and it seemed to be some type of craft, and then eventually this craft disappeared. He was convinced it was a UFO. I think also Ronnie Wood's wife and Ronnie Wood saw a UFO in Brazil. I mean, again and again, you just hear all these different stories about rock stars who have run-ins with UFOs or aliens. It's really kind of the chapter is could have been a book in itself.
That is just absolutely incredible. While we are, only about 4.5 minutes here before we got to say goodnight, or actually more about 3 minutes before we got to say goodnight. But, I mean, looking at all of these stories, do you have a favorite that really sticks with you that we haven't mentioned on air yet tonight?
A favorite? Oh, man, there's so many. I think for me, some of my favorites are the Elvis Presley ghost stories. And I think it's my favorite because, you consider Elvis the king of rock and roll, and he's the king of haunted rock and roll too, because everywhere Elvis spent time, there seems to be some type of ghost story attached. There are several ghost stories attached to Graceland, the home that he lived in when he became a rock star. It's rumored to be haunted by Elvis as well as his mother. Priscilla Presley has had encounters with what she thinks is the spirit of Elvis's mother, Gladys, in Graceland. There's a story about his daughter who was performing at the Ryman, and she goes to her dressing room and she can't get the door open because it's stuck, and it's weirdly stuck. It's like as she starts to open it, the door opens and then it slams, and then there's this detail is they heard someone laugh and it sounded like Elvis. Elvis's ghost is seen in New Orleans where he filmed Kid Creole, and of course you'll probably love this. There are a lot of ghost stories in Las Vegas from Elvis's era there. The hard thing about writing this as a journalist is to try to separate the different phenomena of Elvis, because he was there are people who dress like Elvis imitators, his band, his entourage dress like him. There's simply just ghost lore about Elvis. And then, of course, there's this idea that Elvis never died. So you have all these elements kind of mixing in, and that's why those are my favorite stories from haunted rock and roll.
That is a great story. Great story. And I was only 3 years old when Elvis died. So, I mean, that is, I don't recall too much about it. I remember my mother being shocked because, as any woman of that era, huge crush on Elvis, massive crush on Elvis.
Yeah.
Right. But I think that was just normal for the time. But, I want to say thank you for you sharing all of these stories with us tonight, Matt. This has been
I appreciate it.
Yeah, this show
I really appreciate the opportunity. Yeah.
You got to get into the hard rock. Yeah, you got to get into the hard rock, man. Okay, you got one final thing?
Fact.
Yeah.
One final fun fact. Elvis dies on the same day that Robert Johnson dies. So it's all full circle.
No kidding.
Yeah, the same date, I guess. Not the same day and year, but the same date.
That is just amazing. It's weird how numbers are synchronistic like that at times.
Yeah, yep. And they are in rock and roll supernatural history.
Absolutely. Absolutely. My friend, do us a favor. You got about 90 seconds here. Tell everybody where they can find your books and more information on them, where they can get them.
The best bet is to go to Amazon.com. My Haunted Rock and Roll and Ghosts of Country Music are there. So that's your best bet. I have a website, mattswain.com. Check me out there as well.
That is absolutely awesome. What other projects? I mean, this is a book that should really never end.
Yeah, I mean, technically what usually happens is I go on shows like this and people tell me their stories. But I just had a book out called Haunted Rails. It's about ghost stories of railroad and trains and all kind of fun things like that. And that's pretty much where I'm at now.
Well, enjoy yourself, my friend. Enjoy yourself.
Thank you.
Because
Thanks for the opportunity.
you totally deserve the hard work. And I definitely know that we got to talk about this again. You know, we definitely got to talk about this again and a lot more of your other paranormal work, because one thing I notice in researching you is going on Amazon, how many books you have out about the paranormal. So the next time we bring you on, we're going to, we'll make it more of a mixed bag. But Matt, thank you so much for coming on Spaced Out Radio tonight. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right, we got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal rocking in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks this week to everybody listening in at home, at work, in your cars, wherever you may be. Everybody in our chat rooms, Spreaker, LGAB, Revolution Radio, Facebook, the Space Travelers Club on our website, and everybody at hashtag Spaced Out Radio on Twitter. Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for putting together a great week of fandom for us, snark for us, because together, my friends, we're watching. We own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Come join the after party. YouTube.com/Spaced Out Radio. We're going to start that in about 5-10 minutes after the show. Also, Rich Giordano, Saturday night. Everett Themers, Sunday night. We go 7 days a week here, so tune us on in. We're always here for you. I'll see you on Monday with Butch Witkowski. Have a great weekend, everybody. We own the night. Good night.